Random person. Okay, this is essentially a web page which is not connecting to any server. Okay, and this is HTML code plus JavaScript which is behind that. When I click on random person, it should. Okay, something is wrong again. Okay, let's open it. If it's not. Okay, you see every time I click a button, personal information is generated. This is actually gibberish characters, but it can be used for testing purposes, like phone number, email, social security, date of birth, and so on is generated. And if you need to generate maybe say 100 random people for testing purposes, you can use this one. Okay, or you can also instruct this page to generate, instead of one person, generate 100 people. It's very easy to do. So it is there. Okay, so you can create a lot of pages like this, which will be helpful for your testing activities. Okay. Said that, let's go back to the presentation itself. Let's recall what the JavaScript is and what we can do with the JavaScript. So, just briefly browsing through the slides. JavaScript is basically, it was designed to add interactivity to HTML pages. It's a scripting language and interpreted language, and it's placed in HTML code most often. So it might be placed on a separate page, separate file as well. And it's object-oriented. Definitely, we covered object-oriented syntax. And also, it has variables, because without variables, no programming language can exist at all. We covered variables and scope. And here's the first JavaScript example when we created HTML code, because this is HTML page. And within the page, we specify a specific tag which is called script. And within this script, we actually put JavaScript code here. This is actually 7 lines of code is a JavaScript code. And after that, we close the script. And then we can continue doing that, just putting additional information on the HTML page, but only this part will be as a JavaScript. And then browser can look at this code, whatever instruction, because this has basically our instructions. And then if we instruct browser can look at these instructions and execute them. Okay, these are commands. Browser will execute them, and then you'll see the results of our output. Okay. That's what we did, and then we can do a lot of stuff with JavaScript, including validation, which we are going to try today, JavaScript validation, and also can do a lot of other actions, including detection of users' browser and operation systems, okay, and also the cookies. So where we put the JavaScript in the HTML code, we already said that. And then we move forward, we save the file, we did this, and then we commented line if needed. We'll cover the operators, because this is actually this language which allows you to do some programmatic activities, just add numbers and do some operations. This is a very powerful and flexible language. We will cover the operators, and also we started to use JavaScript for creating interactive page for DMV site. Remember, we were talking about the DMV last time. And then we actually created this page, and then we unit test this page. We created unit test we unit test this one. We didn't create separate test cases, but nevertheless, we unit test the code which we created. And what we came to is just we created a page which had a text field and a push button, and when we could actually use that page for testing. Okay, instead of modifying the code, we could test values, and that was actually this final version of the code which we have. And then remember, we added this onChange. This is actually onChange is an event handler. It allows us to react every time the value in the text field is changed. That's why it says onChange. It means that every time we change the value, event is generated by operation system, and then we react. Okay, we we can generate tons of different events, which most of them we basically ignore. But this particular one, when the text field is changed, we like to react. We like to capture that situation and check if the value for the age provided is basically, based on that value, we may do some different actions. Typing, for example, you're allowed to take the motorcycle classes, or on the other hand, no, depending on the value of the age. And then this is the final version of the code which we created. And then everyone verified that this is a working version. Okay, so you had this code on your machine, you made sure that it's working. Okay. If you are not sure, you basically navigate to slide 51, copy this portion starting from HTML, ending this HTML, put in a notepad, and save as a HTML document. In that case, you should be able to run it and see it. So as soon as this code is working, we had some exercises which we started to do last time, right? So we did actually first one and the third one, right? But not the fourth and not the second, correct? So let's do it again together with the first one and see how we should do it. So essentially what happens here is that you're supposed to have a page with the text field and the push button. So you enter some name in the text field and press push button. As soon as you push button, that script should greet you saying hello and then the name which you inserted. Okay, that's the code which we're supposed to create. Let's refresh it. What I do, I go to the previous one, which was working code, and modify it accordingly. So what I do, I go to the slide 51, this one, and I copy all this code into the notepad. And I know this code is working. Okay, this is the code which I copied and pasted into Notepad. It starts with HTML and ends with HTML. Okay, so something is missing here. Yeah, before the body, I definitely should add closing form. Okay, but that's not crucial. It should work anyway. So I'm saving this. Save as. And then I specify the location and the file type. So I'm saving here as, we say test15.html. Okay. And save as type, I should definitely specify as all files, otherwise it would not work. Okay. So name of the file is something, whatever name you like to give, .html, and save as type should be all files. Okay, this is important. I save this, and then I navigate to the folder where I save this file, and that will be test15, this one. Okay, I double click on it, and then, as agreed, it has some text field and the push button. When I insert value here, like for example, say, it doesn't work, 45. Okay, that's 45. Let me increase the font size. Okay, this is the value which I inserted. This is supposed to be age of the person, and I click check eligibility to make sure that this person is allowed to take motorcycle classes. Okay, when I check eligibility, it says no restrictions, welcome to DMV. Okay, because we coded that way. If I go back and provide different number like 15 and click on check eligibility, it says sorry, you cannot take any courses. Definitely this is not a very nice page because I have to provide some headers and some text, which I'm going to do now. I'm going to modify this and then say, I'm saying, please provide your age. Okay? And the next button, it should be check for so now if I navigate to the, oh, this is the wrong one. Okay, I go to this test 15. Now you see, oh, my error. This is, I did something wrong here. So BR, yeah, definitely mistyped that. Okay. So, okay. Now it looks a little better because I provided some annotation. It says, please provide your age. And then I say 14, for example. And then I click a button. I change the button, also the button title. It says, check eligibility for motorcycle license. I click on this. But it doesn't work. Oh, allow. Okay. Say 45. Check eligibility. It says, no restrictions. Welcome to DMV. Okay. It's supposed to be working if you copy and paste from slide 51. Okay. Does it work? Sorry? The code? The code looks like this. Okay, this at least HTML part, I mean JavaScript part of it. This is HTML part of it, bottom line. And the code is exactly as in slide, wait a sec, wrong. As in slide 51, exactly, 1-to-1. Actually working code, and as soon as it's working, you may think that you don't need to touch it, okay? Because as soon as you touch it, something is broken, okay? That's typical, because if you ask developer, should I modify the code? If code is working, don't touch it. No, but unfortunately, we have to touch it. We have to modify it, and we need to modify to do the exercises. And the exercise, if you recall, this first one. We have to modify the existing code, so slightly modify it. So we have to provide, instead of a number, say a value for age, we have to provide name of the person, okay? And as soon as the name of the person is provided, then browser should greet us. For that reason, I'm going to analyze my code. So let's do that together. This is my code. Okay, let me minimize a little bit. Yeah, okay. This is my code. What happens here at this very line which I'm highlighting, okay, this line is retrieving the value from the text field. It's basically reading the value from the text field by providing full path to that text field. It says document.form1.age input. This is the full path to the object, and the last keyword value is a property of that text field. This value keyword, or actually property, retrieves us the value whatever user inserted in text field, okay? And it retrieves and gives us that value. But we have to save this value, because if value is retrieved and we don't save it immediately somewhere, this value will evaporate immediately. So for that reason, I create a variable StuAge, which I definitely should say var StuAge. Remember, we talked about that. But unfortunately, JavaScript allows us to skip that. In this case, this is not a good idea. So I'm declared a variable StuAge. In this case, I'm going to change this value StuAge because it's not appropriate name. It will work, but name is not appropriate. So I have to name it as person name, or person something like person name, something like that. Okay. So as soon as I retrieve this person name, I don't need to compare it with 15.5, 16, or 21, or whatever. This is not relevant. Correct? So what I need to do here is that I need to comment this line, all these lines, to make more multi-line comments. So essentially this code is, I put the / star and the * here, observe here and here. This effectively will comment out all code in between. I don't need this code. So essentially what I can do is just simply copy and cut and remove it. Okay? So that's another alternative. Okay? That's what I'm going to do. I'm just simply cutting it. Okay? So my code, my JavaScript code, essentially becomes this one, these two lines. Okay? So from all the JavaScript code, only two lines are remained. Now, this variable personal name now contains the name whatever you inserted in the text field. Okay? So what we need to do with this name? What was the exercise? We have to greet this person, right? In order to greet that person, we have to use this method, which is called document, right? Document is object, and say write, correct? This method write will print anything you like on the screen, whatever you ask. But in this particular case, we don't like to print anything. We like to be very specific. We say hello. We like to print this hello greeting, right? And then add to that hello the name which you provided. Basically, we have to concatenate two strings together. And in this case, I'm saying personal name. And definitely, I have to provide another exclamation mark after that, because greeting usually comes with exclamation mark. Or if you like to greet him very powerfully, then put an additional exclamation mark, like say 5 or 10 exclamation mark like this. Okay? So in that case, that's pretty much done. And then I have to change this HTML text, because I'm not asking user to provide age, but to provide the name. I would say provide a name. Okay, and then the checkbox title also should be changed, right? Because it's not a motorcycle license anymore. The value should be greet person, right? So that should look nice. That's the whole code. Make sure that it's working. Maybe I made some mistake. Let's test that. Okay. This, yes. Provide a name. I'm say Peter. Let's see. It works. Okay. So if it doesn't, then make sure that no errors are done in the code. So personal name here, this one, it should be exactly as this one, because that's a variable which I created, and this variable contains the personal name, that name of that person. If you change don't change this. For example, this is age input. You have to use age input here. But age input is not specific for this task. That's why I renamed it. Okay, that's a very good idea just to rename variable if it does not match the meaning, its content. You got it. Okay. So typo or omissions or
That's typo.
yeah, it's typical. Okay, makes sense? Problems? Does it work? Doesn't work? Sure? Yeah, okay, good. That's good. Okay? Or not okay? Good. So key moment in the code is just reading this value from this field. Okay, that's the most important thing which happens here. What you do with this value is a secondary. You can add that value, concatenate it, validate, verify. Is a secondary. Most important, this part. If you cannot read the value from the text field, code is useless. Okay. Now this is exercise number 1. Now, going to exercise number 3 and 4. Number 3, you should be able to convert, let's see, what we do that. We have to modify the existing code, so page prompts you to enter radius, okay? And then based on that radius, we should be able to calculate the circumference, okay? So instead of greeting people or person, we ask user to input some number, which is a radius. So I'm erasing this. So if you have a circle, and then that circle has some radius, to specify radius, which I say with r. Then what we need to do, we need to calculate the length of this circle. Basically, it's called circumference. And definitely there is a dependency on the radius. You realize that the bigger the radius, bigger the circumference, okay, and so on. And how exactly it is calculated? Which is the formula? 2 times pi and then multiply by r. Okay, that's what it is. So r is provided by user. 2 is a constant. Pi is you can take as 314. Okay, so what you need to do, you ask user to provide that number and then make these calculations within the JavaScript. JavaScript can do that, and then print out the length of the circumference. Okay, so it should be pretty straightforward. Let's spend some minutes on that before moving to the next one, just for refreshing purpose. Some of you completed that, I remember, but nevertheless, let's recall it. Code which I'm going to modify, that's already existing code. So what I do here, instead of just saying hello plus personal name, I don't do that. So what I need to do, I'm going to say variable circumference equals, this is personal name. I'm going to change that. That's not a personal name, but I'm calling radii. Equals 2 times multiplied by 314, right? Multiplied by radius, right? That's what it's supposed to do. And then after that, I'll say, simply say, instead of hello, to say circumference is circumference. That's what it is. Okay, that's the whole thing. Definitely, you have to modify just HTML elements accordingly, but this code should work. So if I go and execute this, see, please provide a name. Instead of name, it should be circumference. And then if I took 10, it says, okay, the 10, do it again. So this is the circumference. This is the length of the circle, which has 10 in radius, any units. Okay, if it's centimeters, that will be centimeters. If it's feet, that will be feet. But that will be basically it. This is the value which we got. Okay. Next question is, why do we have so huge precision here? Correct? Because as specified, if you look at my code is this one. I multiply 2 multiplied by 314, and I provided this 10, right? So essentially my calculations will be like this: 2 multiplied by 314 multiplied by 10, right? I just comment this portion, and do expect that the number will be 6314, right? 6280, right? But no more than that. So, but occasionally, I mean, all of a sudden, I get these numbers 0, 0, 0, and then at the end is 4. Where it came from? Any ideas? So if you take a calculator like this calculator, right? I'm going to view, just standard view. I multiply 10 by 314 and then multiply by 2, right? I get 62.8. But JavaScript gave me 62.8 and then all these blah 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 long zeros.
0.0?
It's not 0.0. It's basically computer. It's not a JavaScript error to begin with. Yeah, the floating point numbers are not stored with the exactly as is. It's stored around it. Okay, so 314, which I provided, is not 314, but maybe 314 plus something, a lot of zeros, and then at the end. So when I multiply, you get this one. So this is not a JavaScript problem, with other words. Any computer language can give you that, because this is a fundamental how numbers are stored in a computer. Okay, so but you have to know this. Okay, because if you do some calculations, and then you like to get exact values, then storing the values in the floating format is maybe not a good idea. Okay. Anyway, if you see this, this is not an error. Okay. Basically, you have to know about this. This is the way computer stores the values. Okay. So we said that we did this exercise together. Now it's time to go and do the temperature. Temperature should be a piece of cake, right? Because you just simply change the formula. Okay. This fourth one. Should we do it together? Yes. Okay. So again, this code. I'm closing this guy. The code here, we multiply this is the user input, right? I change the variable name to temperature. Sure. And then I use this temperature, provided that user provided temperature in, what we have to do, in Fahrenheit, and we have to convert to Celsius, okay? So this temperature, I call it temperature F, temperature in Fahrenheit. And that's what the temperature user inserted into the text field. What I have to do with this temperature? What's the formula? I have to subtract 32 minus 32 divided by 9. Okay, so that's the formula. Okay, and that's the value in Celsius. So I have to modify the output also. Say is pretty much it. JavaScript has nothing to do with this conversion. It basically uses the formula. Okay, so if you do a lot of conversions, calculate something, JavaScript is very good at that. Okay, if you don't like to use heavyweight programming languages, perfectly okay. Let's test that. We have to test it definitely. We'll come back to this code. So let's refresh this guy. So 100 degrees in Fahrenheit. Come on. 100 degrees in Fahrenheit matches to 37.7 degrees. Okay. Again, we have this rounding error, but this is that's what it is. Okay. 37.7 degrees. So what else we can do? We can say 220 degrees in Fahrenheit matches to 104 degrees in Celsius. Okay. You can create your own conversion, convert any units from each other. Okay, it can be easily done with JavaScript. Okay, the last exercise which we are going to do together again. Okay, so because we don't have much time spent, go slow. So the last thing is that this advanced one. Essentially, what we need to do, we need to provide two text fields. Ask user to provide numbers, and then we have to add these two numbers together. Okay, so let's do that together. This is the code. We have a text field here, where user can provide put any number. I'm saying please provide first number. Okay, what I need to do next is I need to provide another text field. I have to create another text field here. What I can do, I can simply copy and paste the first text field and paste here. So now I have two text fields. Let me modify here. This is my first text field, which starts here and ends here, and this is my second text field. Okay. So as you may observe, these text fields, both text fields have they have the same ID and the same name, which is not good. Okay, we have to change that, otherwise browser will not be able to recognize which is which. So I'm going to change the name from age input to number 1, 1, and I'm going to change second text field name to number 2. And I'm going to change ID as well. Okay. So now I have two different text fields, both from the code view and from browser point of view. Okay, this is the code. Button submit will be the same, but I have to change its caption. It should be, say, add numbers, or show the sum, whatever you prefer. And then I have to change this one. Okay? Make sense? If you view this page in a browser, you will see that we are talking about two different pages. It says, please provide first number, please provide second number, add numbers. But we haven't modified JavaScript code yet, so it can add two numbers together. So what I need to do is that I need to read the value from the first text field, and also I need to read the value from the second text field. Let's do that together. I'm saying variable num1 equals document form 1. It's not age input anymore. We rename that. That will be number 1, right? Correct? We rename the text field. The same with the second text field. These two text fields, they are different. They have different names. Okay? So what I need to do finally is say the sum is that's what it is. This is JavaScript portion of the code. Okay. Now, variable num1 is reading the value from the first text field. Variable 2 reading value from the second text field. I add these two numbers together and print out the sum. Okay, that's the idea. I don't know if it's working or not, but I have to test. I don't know that before I test the code. Okay. Make sure that you have this code and make sure it's working. Doesn't work?
I get sum of strings.
Oh, you get concatenation instead of a sum.
I don't have mathematical sum. I have two numbers.
That's called concatenation. Basically, you concatenated two numbers together, but that's not a mathematical sum. It's basically concatenation. Okay? So it means that something is wrong here. Just wait until everyone is on the same page. You see the same? Okay, do you see that the two numbers are concatenated instead of added? This is actually as designed. Yeah, so reason is that when we read value from the text field, this value is returned as a string, in alphabetic context. Doesn't matter what. But you may say, wait a second, that the previous exercises work, right? We inserted the radius value, and the circumference was calculated correctly. We inserted the temperature, and temperature was calculated. We used in the mathematical context, right? So the values were calculated correctly. Here, suddenly stopped working. Okay? Why? The reason is that when we retrieve the value from the text field, we multiply it or add it or did something mathematical, right? In that case, JavaScript understood that this number should be regarded as a number rather than an alphabetical string, so it actually worked as a number. In this case, when we use plus operator, remember, it's overloaded. JavaScript say, okay, num1 and num2 are strings. If we use plus operator, that will be simply concatenated, okay? Because that's a default behavior. So what we need to do, we need to say that this is a number, not as a string. One way of doing that, you can multiply these two numbers by 1, just to make sure that in mathematical context, you can say variable num1 equals num1 multiplied by 1, okay? Multiplying by 1 would not change the value, but it will force JavaScript to regard it as a number. There is another way, smarter way of doing that, is a function which will convert alphabetic string into the number, which is, obviously, it's called number, and I'm going to demonstrate it. So you're saying variable sum equals number. This function number will convert string into the number, number 2, and then after that this will start working. Does it work? That's good. Okay, that's supposed to. Definitely we also have a function string, but that's not as important as widely used as number. Okay, because definitely we can convert anything into the string by providing double quotes. Number, converting to number is not so straightforward. Okay? Works? Okay, excellent. So can we move forward? Okay, excellent. So we're done with exercises. Next thing which we are going to cover is randomness. And randomness is basically is being able to generate random numbers. And the JavaScript support randomness by using this function, which is this method, which is called random. And the random is part of the big library, which is called math. Math library contains different functions for trigonometric operations and mathematical operations, and one of the functions is random. So suppose you go to the company and which will write the software for generating random numbers. How are you going to test that? That might be very, they ask that a question on interview quite often. How you test randomness? Let's assume we have a piece of software, it's a black box, okay? It's a kind of a box with one button on top of it. Every time you press the button, random number drops out of this box, okay? And then they say, you know what, you have to test this. How are you going to test it? This is supposed to be randomly generated, random generator. This box is supposed to generate numbers in random or randomly. How are you going to test this? What's your approach? No, it's regardless of JavaScript. Okay, imagine yourself an interview. Okay, and they say, our company, you like to work in our company? They say, yes, I like to work in your company because I know that you have good pay, you have good benefits, it's close to home, right? Whatever. And then you're definitely interested in to work in this company. And this company they manufacture this, random generators. Okay, and they say what our software does is actually user press a button and then random number is dropped here. But you have to test it. Okay, developers created that. They saying that the software is working in a good condition, but we don't know that until we test it, right? How are you going to test it? Okay, you just keep pressing the button, right? Day and night. Okay, and then it comes a bunch of numbers, right? How are you going to test that these numbers are random?
You check it to the same one every single time it comes up?
What if you press it 1 million times and a couple of numbers come as a duplicates? Is it random or not?
Yes.
It depends, right? So how are you going to answer that?
Multiply it to the time, to the actual time.
Now let's say this box is actually, we get a smaller version of this box, and they say, okay, this box generates numbers which is between 0 and 1 million. Okay, in this range. It will not, we know that it will not generate negative numbers. It will not generate number which is greater than million. Something within this range. What's your approach?
I will sort all numbers and then look for duplicates.
Duplicates are, there is a possible that will be duplicates.
Might happen, but then I will calculate how many duplicates from all numbers. Like if I will have more than 50% duplicates, then might be something wrong.
Okay.
Why not check the function that you have to try to generate a number?
But you don't have access to the code. Basically, what you see the button, like pretty much like we saw button on a page. We click on that button, but instead of greeting, say hello, Peter, hello, whatever, we get a random number. Okay, so we don't know how it works, essentially. Yes.
I'll check the statistical distribution for all the numbers.
Good idea. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to programmatically, not manually, create 1 million buckets. Okay. This. Each numbered 1, 0, 1, whatever. And then I'm generating, maybe I'm pressing this button, maybe say 100 million times, okay? And then every number which I get, I put in appropriate bucket, programmatically, not manually, okay? So at the end of the day, I just calculate how many numbers I get into each of these buckets, okay? So, and then if I have even statistical distributions, in average, each bucket should contain 100 numbers, okay? So, plus minus, some bucket may contain 96, some bucket may contain 106, whatever, okay? So, but generally speaking, they have around 100 numbers in each bucket. So, can I shut down the test case, saying, close the test case, say, we're done, going home?
No.
No.
Use the boundaries for it.
Yeah, boundaries definitely. I have to test that if but this is pretty much taken care of. And so I can generate, say, billion numbers, and then making sure that no one exceeds 1 million and no one goes below 0. This test case is taken care of, okay? But when I get the even statistical distribution, am I satisfied? Can I close saying, this application works as is, or can I go home? Or say, no, it's not the case, more test cases are needed. So it's your call. You have to actually say, we are done with the testing, our application works okay, or you say no.
Can I have to know if I fail or pass? If we do it perfect, if you do it put like negative numbers.
You cannot, there is no input. You cannot input numbers. Basically, you keep pressing button. And then every button press gives you some number. But we already checked that there is no negatives and no value above 1 million. Okay? And then we have even statistical distribution. Definitely with some statistical deviations. But generally speaking, each bucket contains approximately the same number of digits. Okay? So, are we happy? Can we? But we have all numbers between 0 and 1 million, right? Correct? So it means that all numbers came out of this box.
How many times?
So we run 100 million times. Press 100 million times we press this button. And then definitely if we generate number between 0 and 1 million, definitely we realize that on average we should get 100 times, or each number should be repeated 100 times. Statistically, if it's distributing evenly, okay? Assuming that's the case. If it's not, that's again a question, how bad it is. So, do you have courage to say, we're done with the testing and come? Or you feel that something is wrong here?
But for example, with numbers from 0 to 1 million, that would be difficult to really say, like, I'm going to try 1,000 numbers, so something like that.
Yeah, you have some feeling that something is not done. It's not done here. So what means random?
Any number. So it's gonna
Random means that you cannot predict next number, right? But these numbers, which are generated and evenly distributed, may come in series, right? I can generate numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way million, and then going back again, 1, 2, 3, 4 million. And then I have even statistical distribution, but with every number dropped, I can predict what the next number will be, right? If I analyze series, correct? So that's not randomness.
Yeah, if the number has a theory like a 1, 2, 3, or 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe it's not working because it's not generating something.
Exactly. So the series might not be the same stretch from 0 to 1 million. You may have some series like 501, 502, 503, and so on, and then again. But this series of these numbers may be repeating. Okay, maybe have 10 numbers which are repeating within all this randomness. That's not full randomness, because as soon as you hit 501, you can make a prediction that the next one will be definitely 502, and the next one will be 503. After that, you may get some more or less some randomness. Okay. Make sense? So this is not so easy. Okay, so you have to analyze this problem, and also if some digits are actually repeating more than others. For example, if you have some kind of this distribution, something that's also saying, you know, this application is some bias against specific range or specific values. Okay, so it requires some analysis. So it's not so easy as you may think. Okay, that was okay. Anyway, any questions? They asked this question on it, by the way.
What's the answer?
Yeah.
Answer is you have to create test cases for this. That's the answer. Okay, and then they have to analyze, because you know what? There is no ideal random number generated in the world. Okay, the best one even has some flaws. Okay, maybe you have some deviations, like for example, some numbers are repeating more often than others. Maybe deviation is 1% more. Okay, you can live with 1%. You can say, okay, that's, you know, if it's biased 1% biased, that's okay. We can accept that. But in some applications, say even 1% is bigger. Okay, it depends on the requirements, software requirements. Because by default, 10% might be also okay. In many cases, 10% might be too much for other cases. Okay, so you have to look at the specifications, but you should be able to test that. Okay, that's the point. Okay, and then definitely random number generator may be good or bad based on these criteria, based on the numbers which it generates. But you have to be able to test that, and you have to be able to show that. Okay. Okay, said that, you realize that we didn't start randomness talking about randomness without reason, and the reason is that JavaScript has random number generator. Sorry? Yeah, so this is the function which is called method which is called random, and random, when you call this method, it returns you random number between 0 and 1. It's a fractional number. It's not between 1 and million, but something between 0 and 1. Okay. Honestly saying, so far I executed all JavaScript code. I never seen ones and zeros. Okay, to be honest with you. Okay, it is possible that this number generated, but I never seen that. It means that I didn't execute code enough. Okay, yeah, you might be lucky. Okay, you may see that, but expect that it is possible. These two values are inclusive. So this is how the code looks like, and this is how we're going to test this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create, you are going to create this code, the script, and execute it. But the code looks like this. So we actually, I create a variable which I call RNDM, which will be return value of this math random function, which will be random number. After that, I multiply it by 1000 in order to, if I multiply a random number which between 0 and 1 by 1000, what I will get? Exactly how much bigger?
This time 1,000 times.
Yes, that will be number between 0 and 1000. That's pretty much it. Okay, so I don't like the fractional number, and then I multiply by 1000 to increase that number. Okay, so in that case, I know that when I print this value, that value will be between 0, because if I generate 0 multiplied by 1000, I'll get 0, still I'll get 0. And if I get 1 multiply by 1000, I'll get 1000. But in reality, in most probably, you'll get something in between 0 and 1000. Okay, let's execute this and see how it works. Okay, so next thing which I'm going to do, you can modify existing code. I'm going to round that number. Essentially what happens is that I generate random number, RNDM in this case will be between 0 and 1. I multiply by 1000 as we did in the previous case, but in this case I'm using function round, which will effectively round the number, it basically stripping off the fractional part, and it will be only integral part will be printed. You don't need to create a separate function. Basically you need to modify existing code. These 3 lines should look like, I mean, your line should look like this. Fine? Okay, so every time you run this script, you'll get a different number, correct? Yeah, that's the whole point of randomness. Make sense? Okay, let's move forward then. Next the thing which I'm going to do, you have a function which will generate random number here. And also we saw how to generate integers. Let's assume I'm testing postal application. Let's say we're working for the postal office. and they ask you to test the applications which they developed. And this application accepts zip codes. So your task is just to generate random zips and make sure that the application behaves accordingly. So what you need to do with this code to generate the zips. That's the exercise number 1. Okay? We're going to go back to these 2 and 3 later on, but the very first one, you need to modify existing code so the zip code is generated. Zip code is, let's assume this is a short form, it should contain 5 digits. Zip code, and say I generate random number, which say okay. So after that, I have to multiply this and round it to this number, right? I have to say it equals math round, and then I'm going to round this number. But if I round this number itself, I'll get 0 all the time, because this number is less than 1 in most of the cases, almost always. I have to multiply it by, to get 5-digit number, what I have to multiply with? 10,000? 1,000 or 10,000?
For a 4-digit number?
I need, zip code consists of 5 digits. Okay, we're multiplying with 100,000? Okay, sounds good. So far so good. I'm saying document write, the zip is, and then I'm saying round it. Okay, that's the code, right? So let's see if it's working or not. I have to test it. These 2 numbers should be familiar to you, these 2 operations. The last thing is just basically I'm printing out. Okay, let's see, that's my idea. Okay, come on, refreshing. Okay, why does it work? Oh yeah, that's correct. It would not work because I forgot to remove the text fields. I don't need these text fields. Essentially, I'm deleting them. Okay. So okay, it's okay. It generated 77114. Am I happy? Close the case. Go move forward. No way. You have to test more. Okay. This is okay. This is okay. So you're actually testing maybe say 100 different numbers. So far is okay, but at some moment you will hit 4-digit number. I'm very lucky this time. Here we go. You see that this 5691 is not a valid zip code, correct? So it means that my code contains glitches, contains bug. Okay. So the reason is that if it turns out that my number contains dot 0 something, if I'm multiplying by 100,000, I'll get a final version, and final number will be less than 10,000. Okay, so this is not valid zip. What I have to do to make it valid zip? So I have different methods, but
to be over 10,000 and above.
No, zip code starting with 0 is a valid ones. If I don't generate these zip codes, it means that I missed something.
The numbers from 0 to...
Yeah, 0, 0, 1, 2, 2 is a valid zip code.
The place values, I think, are like that.
Okay.
It has to, number generator is usually from 0 to 1.
Okay, yeah.
Then you multiply it to get the number that you
Okay,
have.
let's go to the code. So this number which I generate is between 0 and 1. Sorry, 0 and 1, right? Something in this range. Now, if the number I generate will be 0, 0, 0, something like this, right? This is not excluded, right? This is a valid. So if I multiply by 100,000, I'll get 675.
Yeah.
675 is not a valid zip.
So we need to include the zeros.
So I have to prepend it with zeros, correct? So in order to prepend with zeros, I have to implement the logic. I have to validate this number is less than 10,000, right? So what I can do before writing it this to the document, I can say if rounded less than 10,000, right? So it means that it's 4 digits. What I have to do, I have to say, in this case, I have to prepend it with a 0. I have to say rounded equals 0 plus rounded. Right? That will be 0 before the rounded.
But what if it is only 2-digit number?
That's a good question. I have to check that too. Right? I have to actually check 4 different conditions. Like it's not 1, it's not 0, it's less than 10,000 and greater than 1,000. Right? So in this case, I have to add another condition saying, and at the same time, rounded should be greater than 1,000. Correct? So this condition is met. Correct? So this is, and so on. Basically, in taking into consideration all possible conditions here, my code becomes uglier and uglier. Okay? Yeah, let's face it. Okay? It's not nice code to read and not nice code to modify. Okay? And it's something's fundamentally wrong here because I don't need to take care of every zero every digit and prepend it with 0. This is about zip code. But what about if a condition is changed and then I have to prevent more zeros, like 10 zeros, okay, in some situation. In this case, my logic becomes, I'm taking care of only 110 here. I have to do it, actually have the same code 4 times, okay, replicated. And it's actually not good. So what I would like is that JavaScript will automatically take care of this and add as many zeros as needed, so I'll get 5-digit number. Okay, so I like to instruct JavaScript to do that. We're going to do it, but not right now. We have to learn something else. Okay, but that's the way to do. This is actually bad code. Okay, the code which we wrote here, actually we started to write the code, is bad. Okay, so I'm not continuing. It will take care of digits between 1,000 and 10,000. It maybe say 9% of the old digits, right, falling into this category. The number of numbers between 1,000 and 10,000 within 0 and 1,000 range is 9%, correct? So if I don't care of this, approximately in 9% of the cases, my test case will fail. If I don't care about numbers between 0 and 1,000, approximately 1% of the cases, my test case will fail if I don't take care of that, okay? So you have to make these calculations and okay. Anyway, any questions about this?